Welcome, curious minds, to the deep dive. Today, we're embarking on, well, an extraordinary journey, really, into a theory so audacious, so meticulously detailed, it sounds almost like the plot of a blockbuster spy thriller.
It really
We're
is.
talking about the Pike Protocol. It's this chilling assertion that secret societies didn't just influence history from the shadows, but actually meticulously pre-planned every major global conflict.
Yeah, planned it all out decades in advance.
Exactly. So our mission in this deep dive is to forensically examine these frankly shocking claims. We're going to hold them up against the verifiable evidence, the cold, hard facts from the sources you've shared with us. Prepare to have your understanding of history and conspiracy maybe profoundly challenged.
Definitely.
So let's set the scene, shall we? Imagine, if you will, the evening of August 15th, 1871. The air in Washington, D.C. is thick. That late summer humidity. Inside a shadowy lodge, supposedly, a figure of immense influence, Albert Pike. He was a prominent Freemason, a former Confederate general, a scholar of esoteric stuff he's allegedly putting pen to paper.
Right.
And what he's supposedly drafting is, well, nothing less than a terrifying war clock, a 150-year blueprint.
Wow.
A meticulously detailed plan for 3 devastating world wars, each designed to achieve specific, kind of sinister objectives, all culminating in ushering in a Luciferian New World Order.
That's the claim.
The narrative claims he intended to manipulate global events, basically steer humanity towards a predetermined apocalyptic conclusion. It's a truly chilling prospect, right?
Yeah.
A secret society pulling the strings of destiny from the deep shadows.
Absolutely chilling.
And then there's the infamous 1977 London incident, a story whispered in conspiracy circles where document 3.3.3, this alleged war clock itself, was supposedly removed, snatched from the public archives at the British Museum.
Vanished.
The claim is that it just vanished, left no trace.
And this is precisely where our forensic reality check really begins to dismantle that whole dramatic narrative. Because while that story certainly paints a compelling picture of hidden malevolence and historical manipulation,
It does.
our extensive investigation into declassified archives, particularly those related to the British Museum, tells a very, very different and frankly far more mundane story.
Okay.
When a team of, diligent researchers spurred on by these exact same conspiracy claims formally inquired about this document 3.3.3, the museum's official response was unequivocal, and I quote, "No such document exists in our collection."
Just flat out denied it.
Flat out. Furthermore, internal memos from the British Museum, which we unearthed during our research from 1977, they confirmed that no such item was ever accessioned, which means it was never officially audited to their collection in the first place.
So it wasn't even there to be stolen or removed.
Exactly. And then a comprehensive archival audit conducted in 1992, specifically looking into the supposed 1903 Rothschild bequest that allegedly brought this document into the collection. Well, it found that the bequest consisted solely of Renaissance art.
Art, not letters.
Not historical manuscripts, not letters, just art. The paper trail, it turns out, leads to a definitive dead end, not some secret vault.
So it begs the question, doesn't it? As we peer through this fog of rumor and the clarity of documented fact, was this truly history's greatest, most far-reaching conspiracy? Or maybe its most dangerous, enduring lie? Let's unpack this for you.
Let's do it.
Okay, let's start with the very core of the Pike Protocol, this alleged blueprint. The theory posits that this contested letter from Albert Pike laid out a grand strategy for 3 global conflicts, seemingly with horrifying, almost prophetic precision.
Yeah, like you had a crystal ball.
It's presented as a master plan, right? A meticulous schedule for chaos designed to reshape the world in the image of its hidden architects. The first alleged prediction was for World War I. The letter supposedly dictated, and I'm quoting directly here from the purported Pike letter, "The First World War must bring the destruction of Tsarism in Russia, transforming it into the fortress of atheistic communism."
Right.
Now just think about that for a moment. This letter was supposedly written in 1871. That's decades before the Russian Revolution of 1917, decades before the concept of atheistic communism had really solidified as a global force, let alone a political powerhouse.
Yeah, the timing seems remarkable.
To a believer, this sounds remarkably, almost supernaturally prescient. It seems to suggest an almost omniscient foresight into the geopolitical landscape of the future, a precise shaping of ideological outcomes years before they even emerged into public consciousness. The claim is, the Illuminati saw the future and laid the groundwork.
And that's precisely where we apply what we call anachronism forensics. It sounds too prescient because, well, it probably is. When we delve into the documented reality of World War I, the triggers were far more complex, far more organic, and frankly, just messier than any single secret blueprint could possibly account for.
Okay, so what were the real triggers?
Well, the immediate spark, the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand in Sarajevo, June 1914, that was carried out by a Serbian nationalist group called the Black Hand.
Okay, nationalists, not Illuminati.
Right. And they were supplied with weapons and support from Serbian military intelligence, not some shadowy Illuminati agents or Masonic operatives. Our deep dive into the historical records, including declassified Serbian intelligence files, reveals absolutely zero evidence of any Masonic links to this assassination. It was driven purely by pan-Slavic nationalism and a desire for a greater Serbia.
A desire that had been building for a while.
Oh yeah, simmering for decades. Very real political tensions. And beyond that immediate trigger, the deeper causes of WWI are meticulously documented by historians. You've got this tangled web of military alliances across Europe, the Triple Entente versus the Central Powers, which meant a small localized conflict could just blow up.
A domino effect.
Exactly. There was also the fervent arms race among the great powers, creating this atmosphere of intense suspicion and, competitive militarism. And crucially, there were a series of volatile nationalist flashpoints in the Balkans, a region often described as a powder keg in the years leading up to 1914. Ethnic tensions, territorial disputes.
Real-world stuff.
Real-world stuff. Geopolitical pressures, deeply entrenched historical trajectories, and frankly, human errors playing out on a grand scale. Not the precise execution of some preordained Masonic plot. The idea of destroying Tsarism and establishing atheistic communism in 1871 would have been wildly speculative, almost nonsensical, given the political and philosophical currents of that time.
Okay, that makes sense. But the alleged letter doesn't stop with World War I, right? It moves on to World War II.
Correct.
Laying out an equally specific and, frankly, pretty disturbing vision for a second global catastrophe. The supposed plan, again, quoting from the Pike letter, was to use fascism to destroy Zionism's enemies and, quite chillingly, to strengthen communism for a final conflict. Once more, the timeline here is jarring for anyone familiar with history. Fascism as a distinct political ideology, let alone a global force, it just didn't exist in 1871.
Not even close.
It was Benito Mussolini who coined the term in Italy when, 1915, drawing from ancient Roman symbols.
That's right, 1915. That's a 44-year discrepancy right there.
44 years. And similarly, Zionism itself, as a formal political movement aiming to establish a Jewish homeland, was only officially coined in 1890 by Nathan Birnbaum.
Another big gap.
So the letter seemingly predicts specific ideological constructs and geopolitical movements years, even decades, before they actually emerged or were widely recognized. It's this apparent, almost uncanny level of detailed foresight that makes the conspiracy so compelling to its believers.
It is indeed the illusion of precision that's so captivating, that gives these theories their magnetic pull. But if we analyze the real triggers of World War II, we find them in the catastrophic failures of the Versailles Treaty signed after WWI.
Right, the treaty that ended the First War.
Which left Germany economically crippled, deeply resentful, and, ripe for the rise of extremist ideologies. We see the subsequent rise of expansionist, totalitarian dictatorships in Germany, Italy, and Japan, each pursuing aggressive foreign policies, driven by desires for territory, resources, ideological dominance.
Real politics.
Exactly. We see intense global resource competition and the failure of international institutions like the League of Nations to actually prevent aggression. These were the true drivers, not some Masonic master plan.
Okay, but what about the claims connecting, say, Wall Street figures to Nazi Germany? That comes up sometimes.
Now, it's worth acknowledging that some Wall Street figures did have ties to Nazi Germany. That part is true. For instance, Prescott Bush's Union Banking Corps managed assets for Fritz Thyssen, a prominent German industrialist who initially supported Hitler. They managed those assets until, 1942?
Right, when the U.S. government stepped in.
When the U.S. government seized the bank under the Trading with the Enemy Act. But, and this is crucial, zero evidence links these financial transactions to any Masonic or Illuminati agendas.
No connection there.
None found. Thyssen himself, by 1938, was actually opposed to Hitler and was eventually imprisoned by the Nazis. So the narrative isn't even consistent there. Furthermore, and this is a big one, the Nazis were vehemently anti-Masonic. They persecuted and murdered an estimated 80,000 Freemasons in concentration camps. That's according to records from the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum.
80,000.
Yeah. This historical fact stands in direct stark contradiction to any notion of a Masonic master plan orchestrating or benefiting from World War II.
Right. They wouldn't exactly be helping the people who are actively trying to exterminate them.
Precisely.
Yeah.
It makes no logical sense within the conspiracy framework itself.
And the alleged Pike letter doesn't stop there, does it? It culminates in this apocalyptic vision for a third world war.
The grand finale.
The supposed prediction. The third will ignite by exploiting Islam-Zionism hatred until mutual annihilation. We shall then unveil Luciferian doctrine as humanity's salvation. This truly dark prophecy seems, to many believers, to resonate unnervingly with current geopolitical tensions.
It feels relevant.
Yeah. Giving it an almost terrifying contemporary relevance. It paints a picture of a deliberately engineered, final, cataclysmic conflict.
And that's exactly where the retrofitting of vague predictions comes into full play. While current conflicts certainly involve complex dynamics, like, for instance, documented cases of Iran funding groups like Hamas, with significant sums attributing this to a pre-engineered Armageddon by a 19th century secret society, is a major unsubstantiated leap.
So you're saying people are seeing patterns that fit the prediction after the fact?
Largely, yes. Look at events like the September 11th attacks. They were explicitly claimed by Osama bin Laden and al-Qaeda. We have recovered training videos, declassified intelligence reports, reams of evidence that definitively show al-Qaeda's singular responsibility. There's no indication of Illuminati involvement anywhere in that evidence trail.
Okay.
What's also glaringly, undeniably absent from the supposed 1871 blueprint are any predictions for truly monumental 21st century triggers. Things like the incredibly rapid and destabilizing AI arms race.
Huge deal right now.
Or the devastating global impact of pandemics like COVID-19. Or the looming existential crisis of climate collapse.
Right, none of that's mentioned.
Completely conspicuously silent on them. These are all verifiable, immense global threats that would undoubtedly feature prominently in any genuine long-term master plan for global domination or human destruction. This omission is, frankly, as telling as its alleged predictions.
That's a really good point, the things it doesn't say.
Exactly. Which brings us back to this crucial forensic technique we employ. Anachronism forensics. It's like linguistic carbon dating, if you will.
Okay.
We meticulously analyze the specific vocabulary, the grammatical structures used in the alleged letter, and compare them to the actual linguistic patterns and common terminology of the historical period it supposedly originated from, 1871.
And what do you find?
And what we uncover in the Pike letter isn't just a few slips. It's a veritable treasure trove of terms that simply didn't exist in 1871 or were used in vastly different contexts.
Like the ones we mentioned earlier.
Exactly. The term Zionism, as we noted, coined 1890 by Nathan Birnbaum, a full 19 years after the letter was supposedly written. Before that, the idea of a Jewish homeland existed, sure, but not under that specific political label.
Right.
The word fascism didn't enter the political lexicon until 1915. Mussolini forged it from the Italian fascio, meaning a bundle or group. That's a 44-year discrepancy.
44 years.
And perhaps most tellingly, the phrase Third World War itself. The very concept of a series of global conflicts like that, it wasn't coined until 1941 by the German press during World War II, as they considered its global scope. That's a staggering 70 years after Pike's alleged authorship.
So 70 years.
Yeah. This isn't just about a few isolated terms, it's about the entire lexical landscape. As Dr. Lena Petrova, a distinguished linguistic historian from Cambridge University, noted in her expert testimony.
Okay.
The text's sentence structure, its rhetorical flourishes, its specific vocabulary demonstrably match 20th century geopolitical discourse, particularly from the 1940s and 50s. Not the formal, often kind of flowery 19th century letter writing style.
So it sounds like it was written much later.
It simply doesn't sound like a document from 1871. The language gives it away.
It's truly fascinating how language itself, like an invisible fingerprint, can betray a forgery. But if the blueprint wasn't real, if the timing of its language is demonstrably false, then what about the alleged architects? This brings us to the shadowy figures at the very heart of the conspiracy. Albert Pike and Giuseppe Mazzini.
The supposed masterminds.
Albert Pike, the name synonymous with this entire protocol. He was indeed a very real and, in his time, very powerful figure. His verified background is that of a brigadier general in the Confederate Army, served from 1861 to 1862 during the American Civil War.
Right.
After the war, he became the sovereign Grand Commander of Scottish Rite Freemasonry, holding that influential position from 1859 until his death in 1891. a long time.
Very influential in Masonic circles.
He was certainly a controversial figure, known for his vast and often esoteric writings, most notably Morals and Dogma of the Ancient and Accepted Scottish Rite of Freemasonry, published in 1871. This is where you find that infamous passage, frequently quoted by conspiracy theorists. Lucifer, the light bearer, strange and mysterious name to give to the spirit of darkness.
That quote gets used a lot.
A lot. And then there's the even more explosive claim of an alleged letter to the French occultist Eliphas Lévy, where Pike supposedly stated, "We shall unleash the nihilists and atheists to provoke a social cataclysm." These quotes are often presented by believers as, undeniable proof of his dark, satanic intentions and his connection to a wider, sinister plan.
And this is precisely where context is not just important, it's absolutely critical. While Pike did indeed write those words in Morals and Dogma, the conspiracy quotes deliberately, and I would argue maliciously, omit the clarifying context.
Okay, so what's the context?
Pike was referencing Gnostic and Hermetic traditions.
Yeah.
These are ancient mystical philosophies focused on seeking hidden knowledge, spiritual enlightenment.
Right.
Within these traditions, Lucifer, derived from the Latin for light bringer, often symbolizes intellectual rebellion against dogma and the pursuit of knowledge, a quest for enlightenment. It does not mean literal satanic worship or allegiance to evil.
So more symbolic.
Absolutely. The very next paragraph in Morals and Dogma clarifies this intention explicitly. It states, "But let us not deceive ourselves. This is the allegory of soul's awakening, of the triumph of truth over darkness." So it's a symbolic philosophical reference to light and knowledge, not a literal endorsement of evil.
Okay, that changes the meaning significantly.
Completely. As for the alleged letter to Eliphas Lévy, the verified and forensically examined text from July 1871 indeed states, "We shall indeed see revolutions convulse nations. Nihilists and atheists will be unleashed as instruments of change."
So that part is real.
That part is real, but look at the timing. This was written during the tumultuous period of the Paris Commune uprising, a violent Marxist-inspired revolt that deeply alarmed many conservative figures across Europe, including Pike.
Ah, so he was reacting to current events.
Exactly. Pike, like many public figures and intellectuals at the time, genuinely feared anarchist violence and the spread of revolutionary fervor. He was documenting a contemporary fear, an observation of what he believed was already happening or about to happen, not outlining some personal plan for future global wars.
That makes more sense.
And chemical analysis of the ink and paper of this particular letter matches his verified correspondence from that precise period, further confirming its authenticity as a document reflecting his contemporary concerns, not a forward-looking war plan.
Okay, so that addresses Pike. Moving on to the second alleged architect, Giuseppe Mazzini. His confirmed activities certainly paint a picture of a relentless revolutionary figure.
He was definitely a revolutionary.
Founded Young Europe in 1834, an organization dedicated to promoting republicanism and nationalism across the continent. His mail was actively intercepted, scrutinized by British intelligence for decades, so he was undeniably a person of interest.
Oh, absolutely. They watched him closely.
The conspiracy theory then elevates him to this, improbable position of the head of a revived Bavarian Illuminati, despite the original Illuminati being, a short-lived Enlightenment group from the 1700s.
Right. Long gone by Mazzini's time. They were more about rationalism, opposing superstition, not really global domination plots.
The idea within the conspiracy narrative is that Mazzini and Pike were co-conspirators, leading this global shadow government through an alleged organization they called the Reformed Palladian Rite. A powerful narrative because it suggests these highly influential individuals were directly orchestrating world events through a clandestine network.
What's truly fascinating here is that despite Mazzini's confirmed, very real revolutionary activities and his legitimate influence, there's no evidence whatsoever, and I mean zero, linking him to any Illuminati revival.
None at all.
None. British intelligence archives, which meticulously tracked Mazzini's every move, through intercepted correspondence, and they show zero references to Pike in Mazzini's voluminous intercepted mail. We're talking 72 letters alone in the UK National Archives from his time in London.
And if they were plotting world wars, you'd think Pike's name might pop up.
You'd absolutely expect it. If there was a secret war planning correspondence, British intelligence, who were actively looking for conspiracies involving Mazzini, would almost certainly have found something.
Okay.
Furthermore, Mazzini's actual life trajectory fundamentally contradicts the image of a powerful, wealthy, shadowy leader of a global cabal. His police file, which is a testament to his often fugitive existence, explicitly states he died impoverished in Pisa, 1872. Police report lists possessions: one suit, spectacles, 47 lire.
47 lire. How much went that?
In 1872, roughly equivalent to a few days' wages for a laborer. Does that sound like the head of a global shadow government orchestrating wars and accumulating vast power?
No, it really doesn't. It sounds like a struggling revolutionary.
It simply doesn't align with the narrative. And when we look at the alleged secret structures, like the Reformed Palladian Rite, Pike's own private correspondence provides a crucial debunking.
What did Pike say?
In a letter written to a fellow Mason, Albert Pike, in 1870, Pike explicitly stated, "The Reformed Rite exists only as philosophical speculation, a Masonic Rosicrucian thought experiment."
A thought experiment, not an organization?
Not an operational war room. It was Pike's personal intellectual playground, a concept he explored in his private thoughts and writings, not an active, operational secret society planning world wars.
Huh.
This is further reinforced by police raids on alleged Illuminati lodges. For instance, the 1876 Naples Lodge raid, conducted by Italian authorities specifically looking for seditious plots, found 0 war planning documents.
Nothing related to wars.
Nothing. Instead, later investigations, like one in Prague in 1883, found that the members of these alleged secret societies were actually poets debating Plato.
Poets debating Plato, not exactly plotting Armageddon.
Far from it. They were engaged in philosophical discourse, intellectual pursuits. Now, let's get to the definitive archival and scientific debunks regarding the missing document 3.3.3 and the alleged Pike-Mazzini correspondence itself, which really formed the bedrock of this entire conspiracy.
Right, the core evidence, supposedly.
Firstly, regarding Mazzini's alleged Illuminati network, as we mentioned, his police report shows he died impoverished in Pisa, 1872. Police report lists possessions, 1 suit, spectacles, 47 lire. This directly contradicts the image of a wealthy, powerful figure leading a secret global network.
The facts just don't fit the story.
Secondly, as for the alleged lodge activities, the 1876 Naples Lodge raid found 0 war planning documents. These historical records systematically dismantle the claims of a functional war planning secret society.
Okay.
Most critically, we have the British Museum's own records and official statements. A comprehensive 1992 archival audit, specifically initiated to address these persistent conspiracy theories, explicitly states no document 3.3.3 ever cataloged.
Never even officially recorded as being there.
Never. This is a forensic, institutional confirmation from one of the world's leading archival bodies. And if you still have any doubt, a formal 2023 FOIA request, that's a Freedom of Information Act request, submitted to the British Library, yielded a direct, undeniable response. No records matching Pike-Mazzini or document 3.3.3 exist, referencing document BLFOIA 223087.
So multiple official checks, all coming up empty.
Exactly. The British Museum's official stance is crystal clear. The Pike-Mazzini letters are a 20th century fabrication.
Fabrication. Okay.
To further solidify this, forensic testing on alleged fragments of Letter 3 that have surfaced over the years reveals stunning, irrefutable anomalies.
Scientific testing, what did they find?
Okay, so one fragment, submitted for analysis in 2016, showed trace levels of strontium-90.
Strontium-90, what's that?
It's a radioactive isotope that is a direct byproduct, fallout, from 1950s nuclear tests.
Wait, nuclear tests in an 1871 letter.
Exactly. Imagine finding a microchip in a Roman vase. That's the kind of anomaly we're talking about. It's impossible.
Okay, that's...
It gets better. Another fragment, tested in 2021, detected cobalt-60 isotope, another specific nuclear byproduct that literally did not exist before 1945, a signature of modern nuclear activity.
Another post-WWII element.
And a 2020 test on yet another Pike-Mazzini letter fragment found cesium-137, a third distinct sign of nuclear fallout, also exclusively from post-1945.
Incredible. So the paper might be old.
What does this mean? It means the paper itself might be vintage, yes. Consistent with the 1865-1885 date range, maybe sourced from old books or unused stock paper. But the contamination from these specific isotopes proves, beyond any reasonable doubt, that it's a modern forgery using vintage materials.
The contamination gives it away.
It is physically impossible for a document genuinely written in 1871 to contain isotopes that are byproducts of mid-20th century nuclear testing. The ink itself is also a significant giveaway. Advanced ink chromatography.
That separates the ink components.
Right. It revealed the presence of synthetic aniline dye. Aniline dyes weren't even patented until 1897. Making their presence in an 1871 letter chemically impossible.
Impossible ink? Impossible isotopes?
These aren't just missing documents. They are chemically and historically proven fabrications, meticulously debunked by scientific evidence.
So, we've established that the alleged blueprint is riddled with anachronisms, the language is wrong, the science says it's a forgery, and the alleged architects, Pike and Mazzini, aren't connected by any verifiable historical or scientific evidence.
That sums it up pretty well.
This leads us to the most important question of all, then. If it's all a hoax, if it's demonstrably false, why did anyone want you to believe it? What was the true underlying purpose of this persistent, elaborate myth?
That's the absolute crux of it, isn't it? The enduring nature of the Pike Protocol has nothing whatsoever to do with its truthfulness, but everything to do with its function as an incredibly powerful psychological and political tool.
Exactly. This theory served and, continues to serve to distract from real power grabs. Think about it. Documented historical events involving genuine power plays, systemic corruption, horrific atrocities. They can often be messy, morally ambiguous, and deeply uncomfortable to confront.
Much harder to process.
Yeah, take the CIA's MK-Ultra mind control experiments, for instance, or NATO's Operation Gladio, these covert stay-behind armies in Western Europe. These were very real, complex, often disturbing instances of state-sponsored operations, but they involve layers of bureaucracy, compartmentalization, and often this uncomfortable banality of evil.
Not a single villain twirling his mustache.
Right. The Pike Protocol, by contrast, offers this clean, clear moral hierarchy. You have the evil, secretive Illuminati at the top, orchestrating everything with almost supernatural competence, and the innocent, helpless masses as their pawns. It provides a satisfying narrative arc, a single, identifiable villain, and a comforting, albeit false, sense of hidden order in a chaotic world.
It simplifies things.
It simplifies things, and that's far more satisfying psychologically than confronting the amoral chaos and unresolved trauma of real conspiracies, where maybe ordinary bureaucrats signed off on unspeakable acts, or where events unfolded due to a confluence of complex, unglamorous factors. Those truths are often too nuanced, too close to home, and too lacking in a clear antagonist to be as compelling as a grand Luciferian scheme.
And beyond just distraction, the theory was fundamentally about control through apocalyptic fear. It is absolutely critical to understand that this entire narrative, as we largely know it today, isn't from 1871 at all. It's a psychological weapon forged in the crucible of 1950s McCarthyism by a man named William Guy Carr.
William Guy Carr. Okay, who was he?
Carr was a Canadian naval radio operator, despite his later claims of being some kind of intelligence officer, and he became a prolific anti-communist pamphleteer after World War II, deeply immersed in the Cold War ideological battles.
Right, the Red Scare era.
Exactly. And in a private letter written in 1958, Carr made a crucial, really shocking admission about his primary source for the Pike letter. He wrote, "I reconstructed the Pike letter from memory. I cannot now locate the source."
He admitted he basically made it up from memory and couldn't find the source.
It's a direct, undeniable confession of fabrication. He invented it, or at least pieced it together from unverified fragments and his own imagination.
Wow.
Furthermore, his highly influential book, Pawns in the Game, which popularized this entire theory, shows an 89% similarity in its rhetorical structure and narrative tropes to the Protocols of the Elders of Zion.
The Protocols, the infamous anti-Semitic forgery.
The very same notorious, widely debunked anti-Semitic forgery from the early 20th century, which purports to reveal a Jewish plan for global domination. This striking similarity indicates significant plagiarism and a clear ideological lineage. Carr essentially used the same framework, just swapping out Jews for Illuminati or Freemasons.
So borrowing from one dangerous fabrication to create another.
Precisely. And of course, there was undeniable financial gain. The sales of Pawns in the Game generated millions. Carr's estate tripled in value post-publication. So it wasn't just a political tool. It was created to profit from and exploit existing societal fears and anxieties, particularly that deep fear of communism during the Cold War.
And it was incredibly effective at weaponizing Pike's existing esoteric language, wasn't it? Taking phrases like Lucifer, the light bearer, and twisting them way out of context to frame contemporary fears.
Absolutely.
This allowed Carr and others to label communism as Masonic plot, to dismiss genuine decolonization as Illuminati scheme, and to characterize complex geopolitical shifts as ancient conspiracy. It's a powerful narrative because it offers a single, coherent, albeit entirely false explanation for everything.
It ties it all together neatly.
It collapses the chaotic, multifaceted reality of global events into a simple hero-villain story, providing a comforting sense of order where maybe none exists.
Which brings us to the fundamental psychological reasons people cling to such theories, even when faced with overwhelming, verifiable debunking. One key factor is our innate human tendency for pattern recognition.
Our brains like finding patterns.
Our brains are hardwired to find patterns, to connect dots, especially under stress, when chaos feels overwhelming. It's why, in times of uncertainty like a global pandemic or war, people often link unrelated events, like, say, COVID spikes and the rollout of 5G towers, into false causalities.
Seeing connections that aren't there.
Right. Every perceived connection, no matter how tenuous, offers a little hit of dopamine, making the brain almost addicted to this pattern seeking, even when the patterns aren't real. It's a survival mechanism kind of gone awry in the age of information overload.
Okay, that makes sense. What else?
Then there's agency detection. For millennia, humans attributed chaos and inexplicable events to intentional agents, angry gods, spirits, malicious forces.
Someone's got to be in charge, right?
Exactly. In a modern, increasingly secular world, this deep-seated need doesn't simply vanish. It just finds new targets. So instead of a catastrophic storm being caused by an angry deity, it's caused by the Illuminati. This provides a sense of moral simplicity, the comforting belief that evil has a clear headquarters, like a secret society or a meeting in Davos, rather than being a diffuse, bureaucratic, or even accidental phenomenon. It's easier to fight a named enemy than a systemic failure.
Easier to grasp.
Closely related is the brain's powerful drive for cognitive closure, the inherent preference for false certainty over ambiguity. Ambiguity is mentally taxing. It burns a lot of neural energy, triggers stress hormones, which can inhibit critical thinking.
We don't like uncertainty.
We really don't. Conspiracy theories, by contrast, offer ready-made, simple answers to complex problems, reducing this metabolic strain by up to 60%. We saw this dramatically during global lockdowns, for instance. QAnon recruitment peaked in isolated, high-stress households, precisely because it offered a ready-made community and an identifiable enemy, reducing that immense mental strain and providing a sense of control where there is none.
Wow.
And in our modern world, this is all turbocharged by digital amplification. Platforms like TikTok are notorious for algorithms designed to boost engagement, and they often boost emotionally charged, sensational conspiracy content up to 3 times faster than factual material.
So the algorithms are feeding the fire.
Absolutely. This leads to these intense dopamine spikes every 45 seconds as users scroll through a feed of new revelations. It creates a powerful self-reinforcing feedback loop that trains the brain to crave and seek out more conspiratorial content, regardless of its veracity, simply because it's emotionally stimulating and offers that quick hit of knowing a secret truth.
So, when you put it all together, the true damage of the Pike Protocol is profound. It's not just a harmless historical curiosity or some quaint old fairy tale.
Not at all.
This 19th century myth, meticulously concocted in the mid-20th century, effectively distracts humanity from provable existential threats that are staring us directly in the face.
The real dangers.
We're talking about the very real and accelerating dangers of climate collapse, the complex ethical challenges posed by rapidly advancing AI technologies, the ever-present specter of nuclear proliferation. While we're busy debating whether an 1871 letter predicted the future, the world is quite literally facing monumental challenges that demand collective action and critical thinking.
Yeah, it diverts energy and attention.
It's a powerful narrative that hijacks our attention and directs it away from problems that genuinely require our engagement, our intelligence, and our collaboration. As we wrap up this deep dive into the Illuminati War Clock, we hope you've gained a clearer understanding of how compelling and ultimately how fabricated such narratives can be. But the story of hidden power structures, of individuals influencing global events from the shadows, well, it doesn't end with the debunked letter.
No, the search for who really pulls the strings continues.
Exactly. Next time on The Deep Dive, we're going to pull back the curtain on something far more impactful because we're exploring the real architects of WWII and their Wall Street paymasters. It's a look at documented, less glamorous perhaps, but far more consequential power structures that genuinely shaped history and whose influence continues to resonate today.
And as you reflect on all this, maybe consider this thought. History isn't really a chessboard, with a few grandmasters secretly moving all the pieces, according to some hidden ancient plan. It is, as Dr. Evelyn Reed, a brilliant historian, aptly puts it, a hurricane driven by climate, greed, human error, and countless unpredictable micro-decisions.
A hurricane, not a chessboard. I like that.
The allure of a comforting lie, like the Pike Protocol, is that it whispers that your suffering has meaning, that there's a grand design, even if it's a nefarious one. It makes the world feel simpler, more controllable.
Yeah.
The discomforting truth is that our pain, our global crises, were often just,
Whoa.
A bureaucrat's Tuesday, or the result of systemic failures, market forces, profound human foibles, both deliberate and accidental. This is why disbelief feels like stepping off a cliff into chaos. Because confronting the true, often messy and random nature of reality can be terrifying.
It's harder work.
It is. The courage lies not in finding hidden patterns that don't exist, but in tolerating the mystery, acknowledging the chaos, and facing the storm without needing that comforting mythology.